Unfortunately, having worked with files, we have now made the directories just a little bit jealous, and they want you to do some work with them. So would you mind? We can see then that I am still within the desktop directory. Let's just go through and tidy up this remaining password file. That should be rm for remove. Then we can clear this out so everything is tidy again. Let's move back to our documents directory. So cd ... takes me to my home directory, the parent directory, one directory up, then /documents. Then we can see in here that this is clean and empty. If we want to create a directory, we can do this with rmdir. If I go through rmdir test, we are creating the test directory. Again, we can see this with the ls command, that we have got the test directory showing as blue. If I did this, so if we go through and then let's create the cells and the test directory. I love this error, it's really great, isn't it? Cannot create cells test because there's no such a file or directory. Well, excuse me, what did you really think the rmdir command was doing? The error really is saying that is unable to create the test directory because the cells directory doesn't exist. We can then go through and change this. Let's say to rmdir and then -p to create the parent path, and then cells/test. When we look in our current structure, we have got the cells in the original test directory, but then when we list the cells directory, we can see then that we have got the subdirectory test within cells. From the current directory, if I go through and do a rmdir test, that works without any issues. But if I try to remove the directory cells, then that doesn't work because the cells directory has content. Let's move into for the moment cd into cells. When we run our listing here, we can see that we have got that the test directory. Again, remember, pw can remind us of the full path of where we are currently located. The files just in context, where we are within our file system. If I want to remove a directory with content, let's just move back. We have seen that rmdir doesn't work. Another way that I can run rmdir is actually go !rm. That's going to run the last command that began with rm. It reverse searching my history for the last command that began with the characters that I typed. Of course, I have to be a little bit careful with that, especially with removal commands and making sure that we had the current history command in mind. But what we can do is do an rm -rf and the cells. If I really do want to remove the cells directory, then I can recursively delete it and force the deletion. This is going to delete the directory and its content. Quite simple, it disappears. This is really important then to make sure we are deleting the correct directory, because we are forcing the deletion again. Especially important, especially if we are running as root. Staying as our standard user, we have less access to our file system, certainly write access, so less damage that we can do, but as root or the admin user, we have full rights through to the file system, so we don't need to be doubly careful if we are running as root. Let's go through and create a couple of directories. If I do this rmdir 1 and 2, this is creating two directories. Both are the same level. Again, if I do a listing here, then I have got the directory 1 and I have the directory 2. If I want to create some content, we can then go through and touch 1 and slash, and you will have it starting with file, but I am opening up my left brace brackets here and I am going to put 1.5. This is going to be creating files 1 through to 5, file 1, file 2, file 3, etc. we can see that those numbers are contained within the brace brackets. Let's hit enter on that. We now take a look at the content of 1, so ls1. We can see that I do indeed then have those 5 files. If I want to copy the complete directory, we can choose to cp capital R for redirection. In the case with copy and then choose directory and specify that I want to copy across to 2. That's copied to one directory and R of its content through into 2. When I look inside the 2 directory, it should have one subdirectory called 1, and within that directory we should have the 5 files. One of the things that I can do to help see this, if I install the product, so I am just going yum install 3. This is a great command. It was just reminding me that I have to be root to be able to run that command. Let's just put sudo in front of it. Your first user should have been added to the administrator group. I can put the password for my Jack user. Then we carry out the install. We can choose yes to continue, and we download and install. Let's get back to where we were then. Running 3 on directory 2. Remember, we had copied the directory 1 into 2. Now when I use the 3 command, we can then see that 1 is indeed a subdirectory of 2. We can see the 5 files that we created. If I want to copy a directory and its content, I can use cp minus capital R. If we wanted to remove the directory, we can then go through and do this with our rm minus rf and then 2. It's going to delete the directory and all of its content. Let me clear the screen. We have seen then when we creating a directory using mkdir that we can use the option -f to create the parent structure, but we can also set permissions, so mkdir -m. We'll look at permissions later on, but let's go through and do a mkdir and then 777 with the -m option. We can have then we could call it D1. Let's go through and 700 and then D2. Whilst I still got those commands up there. The 777 are all permissions. We have got read, write and execute for the user, the group and others. 7 is all permissions and it's all in all 3 blocks. Whereas with D2 we have kept this to private for the user. We have got read, write and execute for the user, nothing for the group and nothing for others. Then when we do an ls -ld on D1 and D2, remember I have to choose -ld as my option to see the metadata for directory D1 and D2. Rather than their contents, we can see then the difference in the permissions. Read, write and execute all the way through where we set the mode to 777. Where we set the mode to read, write, execute, then we have only got the permissions for the user and there are no permissions for the group or others. The 2 main permissions that we have with mkdir are -m for the mode or permissions and then -p where we can go through and create the parents as well. Now we are just about ready to start taking a look at our symbolic links.